for lots of prayers. Our second reading today comes from the Gospel of John, and it's just one verse. Remember, in this sermon series we're being inspired by one verse before our sermon, and this one comes out of the section of scripture that I read at the beginning of this series, when the first disciples of John were introduced to Jesus, remember? And it's chapter 1 of John, the Gospel of John, verse 39. Hear the word of the Lord. He said to them, "Come and see." They came and they saw where he was staying, and they remained with him that day. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. This is the word of the Lord. I want to begin our time together in the sermon this morning by telling you a little bit of Methodist history. I want to hold up to you a glorious moment of evangelism in our past. In the year 1916, the General Conference of what was then the Methodist Episcopal Church introduced a plan to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Methodist Episcopal Missionary Society. It was coming up in just a year or two, and they wanted to celebrate it with some meaning. And so, at that General Conference, they came up with a plan, and they called it the Centenary Plan, or as we would call it, the Centenary Plan. This plan called for the denomination to meet 10 objectives. And these objectives were far-reaching and kind of amazing. Let me read them to you. The first objective was that the Methodist Episcopal Church would take their full share of the evangelization of the world. They were ready to take that Great Commission seriously and prepared to take it everywhere. As a way to do that, they proposed $8 million a year for 5 years. So that would have been $40 million to do this work. It was going to be a joint mission of the foreign and the home mission organizations. And it was going to be a vast church-wide campaign by the means of the press, of pictures, and the pulpit. Every level of the church, from the very top to the very bottom, was to be involved in mission. Number 6, every local church was to be made dominantly evangelistic at home and mission-oriented in outreach. The 7th objective was the teaching of the stewardship of life, character, and possessions would be taught at all the local churches as fundamental to Christianity. Number 8, prayer life of the church was to be zealously cultivated. Number 9, a denomination-wide celebration would be held, a sort of Methodist World's Fair, in Columbus, Ohio, in June of 1919, as a culmination of all of this celebration for the missionary society. And the 10th objective was that the North and the South Methodist Episcopal Church would both be a part of this program. They had not yet reconciled since the Civil War. This plan was big. It was optimistic. And it was enthusiastically received by the people in the United Methodist Church, or in the Episcopal Methodist Church at that time. And the fundraising continued to increase as the people became more excited about it. Suddenly, $40 million just wasn't quite enough. And they raised it until the end of it. They were going to raise $100 million. They did it in the midst of World War I. That culminating event, that Methodist World's Fair, was happening while they were signing the Treaty of Versailles. Actually announced it over the loudspeakers and had a moment of celebration right in that celebration. Over 1 million visitors came to this Methodist World's Fair over 3 weeks. And it actually required 7 new exhibition halls to be built in order to house all of the missionary exhibitions that they wanted to bring forth. They had elephant rides for the missions in India. They had an African hut set up that you could go and walk in and experience. You name it, they had it. This event cost $5 million to put on. By April of 1920, they had received $15 million, enough to pay off the event and still have $10 million toward this project, toward these missions, to get the word of Jesus Christ, this evangelistic mission, to happen. Now, this was post-World War I. Things were slowing down. And though they had set that goal of 100 million, they only got to 80 million. $80 million. In case you don't understand, this was, 1920 around. So if we were to raise the spending equivalent of that amount of money today, we would need to raise $1,360,000,000. They were dedicated to their mission. They put their money where their heart was. After this big June event, of course, they had to come back together and analyze it. And so a month later, a big portion of the leaders of the church came back together and talked about everything that happened and how they were going to get the rest of the money that had been pledged, the rest of that 80 million, to come in, and came up with plans. But they issued a challenge to the local churches in the next 11 months, when the next general conference was going to be held, that they wanted to see 1 million new souls in the church. And do you know what? They actually did it. In 11 months, they actually drew into the church 1.8 million new people by deciding to do so. Through worship and through the Sunday school. And though they did not all become members, some came in and faded back out. What an amazing accomplishment in 11 months. Now here's what you need to know about 1920. They were doing this in a setting. They were drawing all these people into the church in a time and a place where 80% of the people in the United States were connected to God through a church. 80%. These were, if you were around in 1920s, you're 100 now. We mentioned someone today who was 100. It was just a baby at this time. So 100 years ago, this was still amazing. Hold it up. This is a moment to savor in Methodist history, where we believed anything was possible, and because we believed it, we made it happen. But here's some other interesting statistics. When we look around our congregations today, there are a lot of other generations who are represented. And today, when we look at people who were born some 80 years ago, about 65% of the people in their generation are today connected to God through a church. If we come down to the next generation, those people who were born 60 or 70 years ago, the baby boomers, it's only 35% of people who are connected to a church connected to God through a church. If you bring it down again to the Generation Xers, people who were born 40 to 50 years ago, less than 20% of people are connected to God through a church. If you look at the people who were born 20 to 30 years ago, the millennials, less than 10% of them are connected to God through a church. The trend is clear. It is no longer the societal norm for people to come to church. Instead, you and I, the church, have to go to them. The good news in the statistics, and there is some good news, is that the world around us is teeming with potential new Christians. They're throwing the net. They're everywhere. Do you know, this is one of my least favorite statistics, and we are going to change it. The average United Methodist invites someone to worship once every 38 years. This might be part of the problem. Now, why is that? There are lots of reasons why it is, and one of them is a misunderstanding about what it means to invite someone. Inviting someone to worship is not saying, I love my church, you should come sometime, and walking away. That's a wish. That's not an invitation. An invitation has 3 parts. Number 1, it's personal, face-to-face, or at least Facebook to Facebook. One-on-one. It's specific. It says, will you come to church with me next Sunday or on the 12th at this time? And it's relational. It says, will you come with me to church? Do you need me to pick you up? Can I save you a seat? Here's the thing. We all want to belong. We all want to know that we're being anticipated. We love to walk into our grandparents' house. Why? They're always happy to see us. That we know that we're wanted in that place. It's a human need, a desire to want to belong. Have someone saving a seat for us makes us feel like we are not only welcome, but we are anticipating. The people are looking forward to us coming. So how are we going to do something about these statistics? First, we must learn to be 21st century missionaries. We can't be missionaries like those people were in 1916 or 1920. Their methods won't work. But we want to do this. We want to become 21st century missionaries without being weird. That's our big worry, right? We don't want people to think we're weird. And when we think of missionaries, when we think of evangelists, when we think of evangelism, we think weird. We don't have to be weird to be an evangelist. But we do have to do some things. First, we must remember that we are missionaries. Every single one of us. It is part of the core of our Christian identity. If you are a Christian, you are a missionary. Not just on Sundays, not just when you're serving in that particular program, not just when you're on that mission trip. You're a missionary. Every day. You're a Christian. Every day. Second, we must have a plan. An intentional plan. Now, one of the things about having a plan is you have to stick to it. When we sang that hymn a little while ago, and some of us were singing verse 2 from the hymnal, and some of us were singing verse 3 from the screen, because I didn't realize that. I noticed to consider how much time do we spend with people who aren't connected to God. Consider who is it among your friends, your relatives, your acquaintances, or your neighbors who is not connected to God. And then you need to pray. Pray for God to bring one of these people, whether it's one of your friends, relatives, acquaintances, or neighbors, or someone you don't know yet. Pray, God, that God would reveal to you that they are the one. And then pray for them. Pray that God would connect with them, that God would make himself known, whether it's through you or through others. And then just go about your life. Be authentic. Do what you normally do, but do it with your radar up. We need to be looking and thinking beyond ourselves in order to see an opportunity. There could be an opportunity to start a conversation with someone who's unconnected with God, but if we aren't looking up, if we're concentrated on what we're doing and only that, we miss the opportunity. We have to see people and not just with our eyes. We have to be listening for their stories. In Matthew chapter 4, we read how Jesus was walking along the Sea of Galilee, and he saw two brothers, Simon, who we later call Peter, and Andrew, and they were fishing, throwing their nets into the sea. It was their regular work. They went about doing every day. And Jesus came up to them and said, "Come with me. I'll make you a new kind of fisherman. I'll show you how to catch men and women instead of perch or bass." And they didn't ask questions. They simply dropped their nets and followed. Friends, when you and I decided to follow Jesus, we became fishers of people. How is your catch? How's it going so far? Sometimes we're called to do our fishing outside our comfort zone. Cue the run. Sometimes you're called to make new friends, to go to new places, to purposefully go to some place or do something new in order to connect with new people, either through mutual friends or through mutual interests, things that you both enjoy. We have to do this with our eyes wide open so that we can really see the people who are there, so that the Lord can move us to connect with them, so that we can bless them in any way we can. Because whether or not they become lovers of God, we have been commanded to love them. The two great commandments, remember, love God and love people. And so, let's say we meet someone, and we feel that God is nudging us, whether this is a known person or a new person, that this is the one for you to pursue through your Christian witness. What do? How do you go about that? It begins with friendship. Real and authentic. You can't fake this. It can't be manipulation. You have to be open to God, creating a place in your heart for a new person in your life. And as you create authentic friendship, you listen for their story. You watch them for signals. If you're really watching, you'll see them. Signals that indicate curiosity or openness to discussing the matters of faith. And when those signals are shown, you need to be prepared to tell your story of faith, or how God acts or is acting in your life right now. Be prepared to share your witness when interest is indicated, but don't share it before. Wait. Sometimes we have to wait upon the Lord for the right moment, and you'll know when it is if you're looking for it. Be when the Holy Spirit gives you that nudge, instead of shrugging it off like we usually do, instead of going, well, that was a weird random thought, act upon that nudge of the Holy Spirit. It really is all about relationships. The majority of people who find God find Him because of other people. Someone else introduced them. Just like the text, that very short text that I read from the Gospel of John today. It was John the Baptist that introduced those two disciples to Jesus. And when Jesus says, come and see where I'm staying, come and spend some time with me, they do it because John had already recommended Jesus. John had already introduced them to him, proclaimed who he was through his own knowledge. When we witness to someone about Jesus Christ from our own experiences with him, we are doing the same thing. We're giving them an introduction. It is Jesus, it is God who does the transformation in people. That's not our job. We're to love people, to let them authentically be part of our lives and to see into our hearts and what Christ has done for us, and therefore what Christ can do for others. If other people trust that you really know who you are introducing them to, they'll be more interested in making that connection themselves. So over the next few days, as you're frantically putting all those last touches on your holiday celebrations, getting the gifts to give, and preparing the food to serve, ask yourself these 3 questions. Take some time to ponder them. First, ask yourself, am I wearing my Christian identity every day? Everywhere I go? Do I know that at my core I am a missionary? The second question to ask yourself is, what is my plan? How do I intend to reach unconnected people? If God has not revealed a person to you yet, be praying for one. Take it seriously. It's part of your identity to be doing God's mission, which is to make disciples for the transformation of this world. And last but not least, ask yourself, who am I going to start saving a seat for in worship? Don't wait 38 years. And let our statistics change in that way. This is who we are as United Methodist Church. This is who we are as believers in Jesus Christ. It doesn't change over the years. Our approach changes.